Hey, so we are apparently live. Welcome, everybody. My name's Leigh Walton. I'm happy to be the guest MC for this crazy project. Joining me are Chris Schweizer and Alek Shrader. Guys, can you say hello?
Hi, I'm Alek. I am usually a tenor. I'm sometimes a director, and then I also do weird opera projects like the Carmen graphic novel and this kooky, creepy Barber of Seville.
I'm Chris Schweizer. I'm a cartoonist, and I help to bring Alek's vision for this program to life, doing the drawing and designing the mechanics of the set that we'll be discussing this evening.
Fantastic. And what a set it is. Um, and just for background, I'm a graphic novel editor and former marketing guy by trade. I've become a huge opera fan over the last 4 or 5 years and been following Chris Schweizer a long time. Actually, wearing my Chris Schweizer Shel Silverstein t shirt at the moment, had to represent. Um, Chris, I know you've been working with sort of playing with literary heritage and famous figures and making cool not only illustrations, but making those illustrations into physical products for a long time. And I understand, Alek, that's actually how you got to meet Chris. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. After I made Carmen the graphic novel, I was looking for my next project, just sort of letting the universe tell me what was going to happen. And on Instagram, I saw this amazing Santa's Workshop by this artist, Chris Schweizer. It was sort of like still a work in progress, so I could see it develop over time, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. I couldn't wait to like pre-order it, you know. So I reached out to him, and we somehow we got in touch, and he said he would be cool to do something. It couldn't be a graphic novel, but I said, well, what about a playset similar to Santa's Workshop? And the rest is kind of a history. It's
Well,
been. It's
sorry, I
been,
didn't mean to interrupt.
well, I was just gonna say it's been even better than I could have imagined because of all of your background, Chris, that I was not aware of.
Well, and
Um,
Alek, when Alek reached out to me, he reached out and he was like, "This is a he showed me the Carmen graphic novel that he had done in conjunction with Arizona Opera, and uh,
And some great artists too, P. Craig Russell, and there's another
yeah,
artist I remember.
and so I wrote. He was like, "Would you be interested in doing a graphic novel adaptation of Barber of Seville?" And I wrote back and I was like, I am probably not going to be able to do that, but I'd be happy to chat a bit further, mostly because my dad had been his last. I just wrote as a aside that my dad's last touring show was with Arizona Opera. He was in a 1982 production of Love of Three Oranges. And Alek wrote back that his dad had been up for the role of the prince in that, I think, and either was he in it or he ended up dropping for something else. I can't remember.
he declined. He declined the gig because my mom was pregnant with me, and
Yeah.
right. And
Well,
so
that's the reason my dad.
almost.
Yeah, that's the reason my dad stopped touring is uh, because
Because you were on the way?
because I had already been on the or I had been around, but my sister was born, and he decided he could leave one of us, but he couldn't really leave both of us. Um, so so that was his last non-local show that he had done. But I thought that was interesting enough that I wanted to talk to Alek, and then that made it to where we had a lot of in discussing it, I immediately became enthusiastic for the project. But that was sort of the impetus was that our dads probably knew each other. If he had been in Tucson at that did he live in Arizona, or had he done any shows there?
I don't believe he had. No, he was going to travel in just for the gig.
Okay. But
So it sounds like you guys both grew up in the opera house.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, my dad was he had been a singer when I, up until I was 3, and he still sang, but he started an opera company in Louisiana called Red River Opera when I was maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7, and did a lot of performances there and pulled in a lot of talent from the general Louisiana area. Some of it central, some Baton Rouge folks, some New Orleans folks, but mostly central. And they did, lots of smaller productions. But I grew up doing that, and because no training, I was a child, but I could hit my notes, and so I frequently, if there was a kid role, a small kid role, I'd frequently be in those. I think my biggest one was Amal, which I did for a couple of years when I was maybe 10-ish, something like that. But usually it was, like you run out, you have 2 lines, your background, your kids chorus and Humperdinck, that kind of thing. So
I have a similar sort of experience. I was according to them, I was sort of hanging out under the dressing room table while they're getting their makeup on, or I was running around in the hall while they're rehearsing. I always have a lot of notes to give them for their, to improve their performance. But when it came time for me to get up on stage as a kid, I really wanted to do it, but then given the opportunity, I was absolutely a nightmare to work with.
But you have, Alek, gone on to a very interesting professional career.
That's true. Yeah, so being the family business, I did for a long time, I wanted to blaze my own path, and I really resisted opera specifically. I knew I was a musician. I knew that was a part of, my identity, but I had a rock band. My first degree is in music education, so I wanted to go be a high school teacher and also continue my rock band. And all these sort of plans that we make, the universe, or I don't know what it is. We fall into the right track.
It's such a funny inversion of the usual story where like the parents want you to get a sensible job like teacher, and you're like, no, I must be an opera singer.
No, you do opera. You do opera right now.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And and it's worked out so far, but I think for me there is sort of a flexibility within it. And I know that's a luxury and a privilege that a lot of struggling singers don't have. It is hard work, but I really feel that I am meant to move out of performance at this point, or transition out of it. I'm more interested in administration and leadership and how and making the sausage rather than being the sausage. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So let's talk about this sausage factory.
Do it.
So why Barber of Seville? Maybe that can be a starter question. Alek, I understand this one goes back with you for quite a long ways.
It does. In fact, my very first professional leading role was Almaviva in the Barber of Seville, and this was at Opera Theater St. Louis in 2006. And it was a production directed by Ken Kazan, and it was not a straightforward traditional production. It was sort of updated to early 1900s, and very much a contemporary take on the way the characters carry themselves. And his Bartolo, being a medical doctor, which is in the libretto, like that's how he's defined. He was very analytical in his attempt to understand women. He wanted to understand them through their physical presence, their bodies, in order to understand their souls, right? Essentially, like, why don't women like me? Well, it must be something in the actual heart. So he's got a heart in a jar, right? There was a boob in a jar. He's got a severed forearm with a hand connected that he's sort of like contemplating, and I
just to be clear, Dr. Bartolo is the villain of the piece. For everyone watching at home.
That's right. He is. He's preventing the two young, innocent lovers from getting together, in a super creepy way, because he's sort of like the guardian of Rosina,
Right.
who lives with him. um, and that definitely stuck with me. Um, it was so it was my first Almaviva, so I didn't come to the production with all of the traditions or all of the expectations of the history of the role. But Ken knew all those things. The director knew all of them, and so we were able to sort of either subvert or modify the production to make it still sort of timely or feel new, even though we're doing old music. And that really showed me that good opera, powerful opera, has existed for hundreds of years for a reason. You know, there's something that's still important about it, and we can sort of modify the way that we deliver it, but there's something great about it. Yeah, so that started the train of thought of what if Bartolo was kind of like Dr. Frankenstein. And then over like 20 years, I just kept on thinking of different
been
thoughts.
percolating.
Like, yeah, exactly. It would fly into my head. Oh, Count Almaviva. Well, that's an easy one, right? We've got a Count. He's trying to essentially seduce a lady.
Like from Sesame Street.
Don't think I didn't try to work that in. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, but we do have Count Almaviva as sort of Count Dracula, the vampire figure.
That's right.
And I'd love to drill down more into each one of the characters in a second. But maybe Chris, tell me a little bit about what are your feelings about Barber of Seville? Do you have any special memories or fondness for it?
I don't think we ever did Barber when I was a kid, and so I mean I know the music from it. I don't know that I've ever seen a production of that one live. If I have, I was really young and it has slipped by me. So I've seen Marriage, which has the same characters. Marriage of Figaro, but
By
I don't
composer
think
by Mozart.
Yeah, but they're based on the same set of plays. Is it 3 plays, Alec?
Yes,
yep.
There are 3 of them.
So I didn't, aside from of course the Bugs Bunny version, and aside from having it on various classicals, man, I don't know how many kids just were given opera and classical tapes, but I had a lot of them as a kid, and so I'd heard it all the way through, but this is and I watched some recorded streams of it in anticipation of this project, but I didn't have a personal connection to it the way that I did with some others, aside from the fact that I was getting really interested in the Italian Commedia dell'arte, because I'd been reading Scaramouche and some other swashbucklers that take place in the theater, and seeing those characters reflected over and over. And as soon as I started watching Barber, I was like, oh, these are these characters. Pantalone is Bartolo, Il Dottore is Basilio, etc. And I mentioned that to Alec. I was like, I feel like these are these types, and he was like, that's the whole point, and that's why we want to shift to the monsters, because that's people aren't familiar. The people of Rossini's day were familiar with these character archetypes as a thing that you go in, who these characters are, and you have an association with them before they ever start singing and before the plot ever takes place. And we don't have that association anymore, but we do have that association with monsters. And so, Alec, I don't know if you want to go into that more.
So the horror monsters are the new Commedia dell'arte for the modern world. Okay,
that's totally the statement we're putting down.
Yeah, that's it.
And they each have sort of a trademark look and silhouettes. Chris, you and I have talked about various things about comic book character design, and I remember reading an essay by Xander Cannon some years ago where he talked about the importance of the silhouette and how that just the shape of a character tells you so much about who they are, and like the proportionate sizes of different characters and the way that their body language plays off each other. And I think
I
you've done
haven't
such
read that. That's what my master's thesis was about. And
incredible.
so I need to. I don't know if that was in.
I'll send you a link
print.
to it. Yeah.
Please do. I'd love to read it. Was that in the back of Double Barrel, maybe? Or?
It was. Yeah.
Okay. I read a bunch of those, but I didn't read all the essays. But I'm sorry for the aside. But yeah.
No. That's so funny. Well,
No,
I mean,
but
you guys are two of the absolute best, I think, silhouette designers in comics. So it absolutely makes sense to me. I was going to say I love what you've done with these character designs. As you know, you guys have been talking about, their shape and their look instantly tells you so much, because even if we haven't seen all these horror movies, we've seen parodies of them. We've seen, you know, Halloween costumes of them. We've seen cartoon versions of them. And, you know, they really are part of the cultural water that we swim in. You know, the Bride of Frankenstein and, you know, Dracula and the Invisible Man and, you know, the werewolf on the motorcycle, who's also, okay, let's talk about the characters a little bit. So we've got the Count Almaviva. He is a count. He's a nobleman, but he doesn't want to be thought of as a nobleman, right? Alek, you've played this character literally, so give us the short version of who Count Almaviva is.
That's right. So he is noble. He has he's trying to conceal his true identity, right, for the sake of a romantic pursuit, which is Almaviva. It's also Dracula. Right. So, and then, you know, the why he does it.
Shape changer.
Sure. Right. Absolutely.
Okay.
And our Almaviva actually has 5 different looks. You can get 5 different outfits to on our standee to put around the house. Sorry, I was messing with them over here. You
got to bring him on camera, by all means.
Bring him on. Here's his first appearance. Kind of the Gary Oldman version. Amazing. Of Dracula, right? This is
That's from the Francis Ford Coppola movie.
Indeed, it is. Well, it's an homage.
Well, yeah, and so basically, you know, there are, of course, copyright issues with some of the specific designs of the different things, and so, but they also, most of the copyright issues as relate to specific movie iterations, you know, dating back to the 30s, are very clearly set in stone. So Universal makes clear like what you're not allowed to have. Widow's Peak, you know, is sort of the main one for Dracula, funnily enough. I mean, that's the hair that people have, ergo that's the thing. You know, Frankenstein having the bolts in the neck, Frankenstein being green. So, you know, our Ambrosio isn't green, he's teal. His bolts are in the head. You know, there are different things that you know, the Bride of Frankenstein has the Marge Simpson hair, it's got a lightning bolt, so ours is sort of these two things that create the same silhouette, but is still a distinct thing. So all of these are so Alek will mention the inspiration and what he sent me, but for legal reasons, we are notably distinct from copyrightable material.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's another reason why Chris was the guy. You know what I mean? Chris understands this, and I'll say that these are they're original. You get what we're coming from, but they're totally, you know, out of his brain. You asked a little bit about like how much did I influence him. I kind of I gave him some of my thoughts, and then I would see what he did, and I was like, yeah, that looks this is his second look. So this guy didn't work in the opera. We first meet this guy, Almaviva, when he's got a whole band with him to sing under the balcony of the woman he loves. And by the way, it's just at the break of dawn. And you know, what high stakes for a vampire to be risking it all.
Okay.
As the sun comes up. Okay. This doesn't work though. He's quite upset actually, but then he meets his old buddy Figaro, and Figaro says, no, you got to try it like this. And gives him a quick makeover, and we're in he's an homage to the Jailhouse Rock type of Elvis, which might come into play in the sequel, The Marriage of Figaro, where we can have sexy Elvis evolve into a different version of Elvis. Anyway, yeah. So this one actually goes much better. And then we have, I'm going to turn the thing around. This thing is huge. It's a massive, massive house.
We got to talk about the set soon. Let's go through the characters.
Figaro's idea is to have Almaviva change looks yet again and arrive at the house as a drunken soldier. Mm-hmm. And so who is the best soldier from the monster world? The Headless Horseman.
Ooh.
Right? And so
and of course the costume comes up a little bit past where his head would be because it's not really headless.
It's kind of tough to see. You can see so little bit through the the dicky there, the ascot. You can see really a little bit of a hint of the silhouette of the face. That was something that I wanted to do with the designs, was to make them clearly costumes. And so with him, with the butler, with some of the other characters, there are like you can see how the costume would work. And then that's also part of the design for treating this, and we'll get into this later, but treating this as a stage production, being able to look at these designs and think, oh, okay, I know how to make this costume by looking at it. Like the mechanics are clear.
That's right.
Fantastic.
All of this can come to life. Spoiler alert. So that kind of works, but Almaviva is ejected from the house anyway, so he needs a new look to come back. They sort of concoct a plan that Rosina's regular singing lesson, her teacher's fallen ill. And so we have a substitute music teacher, which no one has ever met, named Don Alonso. And here he is, the Phantom of the Opera.
Incredible.
This big black hat is, it's called the Basilio because it's what this character in the opera wore. And it became so sort of iconic that they just call it the Basilio. So
I really want a Basilio now. It's like the greatest.
Right. So we retained that as an homage. I'm not sure how many people need to know that, but it works for the look very well. I mean, it's perfect, Chris.
And that's one of the notes that's pure Alek. Like I was I like to think that I have some deep cut information. He's like, look, he has to have this hat, and here's why. And there's a tradition, and that influenced a lot of the characters. Like he said, and I can't tell you how grateful I am to be given the degree of agency and leeway and flexibility with the designs and him just signing off on them. But also, like, he gave me a lot of context with each one. Like, we had a long discussion about each character before I drew them, where he'd fill me in on different aspects of those characters and of their iterations and how different things were staged and what sort of some expected things that are going to be in every production, regardless of the tone, would be. And that really influenced a lot of the designs. And so I did get to have a really free hand with the design, but it was born very much of Alek's expertise with it and his willingness to share that and to contextualize it for me.
But you have such insight. You knew what would be the perfect thing. I didn't have to say much.
What I'm hearing is that this is a real labor of love for both of you guys. I love it.
Oh, for sure.
And Chris, of course, I have to point out brilliant use of color palette for all of the different transformations of the Count. It's still recognizably the same guy because he's still using that same color vocabulary that you established.
Thank you very much. We were going back and forth between making the Count and Rosina blue or red, because again, the main concern was if you make the Count's cape red, is that leaning too far into Universal aesthetic? But we found that because the building itself is so desaturated, the blues would get lost in it. And so, but we did think that it would be really important to differentiate your romantic pairing from the Bartolo's household and Bartolo's household from the municipal things. And so there are ones that, like Almaviva's allies have elements of red but aren't fully red. So the band has elements of red, Figaro has elements of red. The police constable is there, so we did get
there's
to play
like a
with
team
that
of
color.
good guys and a team of bad guys.
Yeah. And I love that kind of thing. Some people are like, that robs from the verisimilitude, but it's an opera. It's already lacking in all, it doesn't have to be subtle.
That's right.
So,
Not this
you know.
piece, you know? Yeah. And going back to people who knew the Commedia when it was coming out, you know, for the first, when it was premiering in 1816, people knew what was going to happen, or they knew what to expect, right? So we're kind of just following that same tradition here.
Yeah.
So did you?
Well, maybe we can switch gears a little bit. Oh, do we have one more Almaviva?
I mean, that finally, you know, what finally happens is he's like, well, none of this is working. I'm just going to be myself. And so there he is, not with a
His
widow's
final
peak.
form.
That's right.
He gets an extra health bar.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
Amazing. Well, I was wondering if we could maybe switch and talk about the set, and then pick back up with the characters. But I mean, this set is by far the biggest thing that you're going to get from this Kickstarter.
Yeah. So I've got
absolutely
it here
massive. You fit it all on camera. My God.
To show off. So and my camera isn't flipped, so it's not mirrored, so I have trouble. So this is the exterior. So we went with a design, you know, we wanted it to look kind of Addams Family-ish, kind of, you know, that kind of thing, but also lean into the fact that this is Seville. So it's got nods to you know, Spanish architecture of the period. And so it's got an exterior with a lot of, and we'll go into details a little bit later. And then it is a, you know, an exterior interior set. So I did the mechanics on this, and if you actually built this set to the scale that it is, it exceeds most performing arts centers' ability to make a rotating set. Like, it's not the, you know, the back isn't going to, but you know, this one is what it is. And then it's got the interior as well, with the different rooms in which everything
so you just flip the whole thing around and you go from the exterior to the interior.
Yeah.
And there's like a bunch of different rooms, right?
Yeah. So so you've got and Alek, I'll point and you can say what they are and what's going on with them.
That's Rosina's bedroom. This
Can you bring it closer, Chris?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
The little portal there connects right here to this balcony. Super unsafe, you know, no railing or anything like that. In fact, there's a broken piece right here, but that's okay because she's not meant to leave. And in fact, when Bartolo discovers she's kind of thinking about going out that way, he bricks it up. So from the bedroom, there's that door which leads right into
real working door.
Absolutely. This is Chris Schweizer we're talking about. So that door goes into Bartolo's lab, right? Which is iconic, right? We know where we are.
There's a table with straps on it where a dead body used to be.
Absolutely. And it goes all the way up this tower. Great place to catch some lightning, if that's your thing. And we do have a storm in the opera. So that fits very well for our purposes.
The chandelier is a separate piece that attaches to the ceiling.
Right. That's right.
For the three-dimensionality.
You could even make it fall on someone if you wanted.
Would you really do that at an opera?
Yeah, I mean, we could think about it. Where are we going next?
Is that another working door, Chris?
Yeah.
This is too much, man.
It yet, so it had a little bit
too much.
That's the main entrance there. The main entrance, which leads into sort of a study area, a receiving area. We've got nice bookshelves. All of these picture frames, I'll mention, are little Easter eggs. I don't know if I want to tell you what they are, but
are they explained in the booklet that comes with it?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, we should have a little thing that says spot, or at least, if not, these operas are depicted
clues.
Spot. Yeah. You know, you figure out which ones are which. But
yeah, like
sorry again, I'm so not good at the non-mirrored things. I'm trying to.
You're doing great. Now this looks like an enormous pipe organ.
That's exactly what it is.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So she does take music lessons. Now there's a piece. We've got furniture.
Open this so I can see the screen there. Hang on. There we go.
We've got some furniture pieces as well. And
yeah, I don't have them on me at the moment, so
no worries.
I've seen some of the images. There's like a crazy vertical upright piano.
Yes. Which is something that Chris was kind enough to redesign for me. The first attempt was your standard upright piano, and this is more of an upright harpsichord, which did exist in the period. They were rare, but they do exist, and so why
way more
not?
goth,
right? Super cool, right? Yeah.
It's such a neat design, and I was like, I can't make any more. I can't make it part of the prototype, but I can put it into the final files for it. So, but that's honestly the only. Hey, can you redo this thing after it was done? Note that I had, which is far rarer than any other job that I've ever done.
And I feel bad because the piano looks great.
And then you've got the Bertus cellar here.
Yes.
For the servant woman.
Too. There's a little door there that pops open.
So I actually cut this one wrong on the thing. It needs to open in. So I just need to remember that for the final file, because I think on yours it opens in, but on this one, if it opens out, it hits this support pillar here.
Oh yeah. Mine's...
So a working door, but a working door according to Chris Schweizer building rules, which you forget that it's going to ram into something. The mechanics of this sort of thing, I can't do math. I mean, I can. I do math like an artist.
You did.
So all of the measurements and that sort of thing, like I can kind of figure out what I think they're going to be for where everything is, but the vast majority of it is trial and error and measuring and saying, oh, okay, this is 2 millimeters too long. This is 6 millimeters too far to the left, et cetera. And so, and the downside with this is there's no way to put part of this together. Like you have to put like 15 pieces and then do that. And then it's done. So that's going to make the instructions kind of tricky to write, but it's doable. But I put together 2 now, so I know it's feasible, and this one went a lot faster.
It's really satisfying, though. It's almost like a Lego. It all clicks, and you're like, oh, there it is. So sturdy.
But it is. It's like it's just pieces until not counting the roofs. You can put the roofs on last, but everything else, it's like it's got to be in place before you do it, and then it's like, okay, it all works. So it's
so it could be a one-person solo job, or it could be a team effort.
It could, yeah. Oh man, if I had an extra pair of hands, it would have been easy. So this is something to do with your loved ones. But yeah, and so there are a lot of Easter eggs. He aside from just the plot mechanics of it, Alek, had a list of this room needs to have the following things for the story. And we discussed which of these things need to be just permanent fixtures in the art and which need to be physical things that can move. And so there are some pieces of furniture that move around. There are some props that move around. Those are based entirely on plot mechanics and staging. And then some things are just in the background. And if you were to do this as a real show, it would be part of the set, but then other things, it's just like, well, we have room here for a few goodies, and so we have nods to other operas throughout. I reached out on Facebook just because my parents, my mom was a violinist. My parents were both classical musicians. My dad transitioned in his middle age into being a choral music publisher, and so a lot of his people are. So I was like, if I put this on opera, so I put all the picture frames empty, and Alek had notions that he wanted to see. I had notions I wanted to see, but I had a post that was like, what are some particularly macabre scenes in operas that people can think of visually, or just striking scenes in operas? And so we have some that are in there just because they're really macabre, some because they're so iconic. And then there's also, you need statues. I like the idea of all the statues not having heads. And so we have some there, and trying to design, which costume, I think yeah, Alek recommended a couple of them because they were specifically Seville based. And then
A lot of operas take place in Seville.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a, you know, it's got a romance to it.
The city of fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And
so
then
it sounds like there's going to be a
thing that-
ton of Easter eggs for opera fans and for horror fans.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, yeah, there's also like little details, like there are these skeleton motif patterns that run throughout, but they're all different, like depending on where you're there. Some of them are missing heads. Some of them are entwined by a long snake. Some of them are, you know, all different stuff, depending on where they are in the building.
Amazing.
Like, every corner that you can just pour over the whole thing. It's truly a work of art. It's the detail is unbelievable. He would send me, you know, sketches, and I'm like, this is insane. I couldn't have imagined it would be this great, you know?
I was just talking to my wife earlier, and I was like, the thing about Chris's art is it's just so tasty. Like, it's just, he creates this visual universe that you just want to spend time in, and every detail is like, all the lines are the same width, and it just feels like so satisfying to spend time in.
Absolutely.
Love it. So I was also curious, like, this is in some ways like an action figure playset, you know, like your Star Wars or your G.I. Joe headquarters or your Barbie dream house. So, like, have you had any thoughts about what you want folks to do with it? Like, is this listen to the opera and reenact the plot with the little figures? Is it like tell your own story? Is it play with your kids and let them dream of something to come to life?
Yeah, all of those things. I mean, I would love it if this were somehow a gateway to the opera house. I would love it if this would inspire anyone, kids, adults, I don't care, to be curious about going to see this show, right? Or any opera. You know, that was the same idea when I did the Carmen graphic novel. I just want people to know that opera isn't scary, that it's not exclusive, that it's not, you know, boring or stuffy or any of that garbage, you know, like give it a chance, and it might get you. It might do its own work. I'm also, having said that, I am not such a big supporter of like forcing opera onto people. And so therefore, if you offer it in kind of a cool way, if you like speak their language, meaning, or my language, meaning monsters, or meaning graphic novels, you know what I mean? We've got some common ground we can explore together. And so I would love it if this made people want to see the opera. But I also just think it's really freaking cool to play with, right? To invent your own stuff. You've got, what do we have, 18, 19 different figures? There's a whole spectrum of characters here for you to do anything you want. But yes, we're going to provide instructions. If you want to play the specific story that this was designed for, you can do that. And if you want to listen to the music that we based the story on, yeah, you can do that too. You know, there are no rules really, but suggestions.
Well, and I always loved that kind of free-formness to anything. And that's something that I try to bring across to whatever projects that I'm doing that are physical objects. So a lot of the stuff that I do is sort of toy adjacent. It's not necessarily toys. It's more like art you can play with, I guess. But I want there to be that sense of play. And I think that some people love replicating the stuff that they see or know. You know, I was like that as a kid. I'd reenact scenes from movies with toys, often toys entirely unrelated to what it is. Because the movies that I loved as a kid did not have toys. You know, nobody's making Courage Mountain action figures or whatever. But Courage Mountain, by the way, is the Charlie Sheen helmed action sequel to Heidi, which is not a joke. That exists. But there's a great little avalanche scene where they're fighting a Nazi, maybe, I don't remember. It's played straight. This is not a intentionally campy movie. But I you know, I remember like reenacting that scene when I had my first snowfall, and I'm like, I've got them on the roof and they're doing the slide down to the edge of the precipice and everything. But you know, I would also want to, you know, make up my own stories with things that had nothing to do with anything else. And I think that having these monster figures in this haunted house set provides a lot of free-form opportunity to just sort of make up your own things. And in doing so, you also develop an affection for these characters. You know, you'll even if it has nothing to do with the opera, if you're playing with these characters, you start to like them. And then when you see that opera, you think, oh, that's my guy. That's, you know, that's Basilio. Like, not that anybody's like, oh boy, I want to be the Vincent Price character. But you know what I mean.
Well, I mean, one of my favorite things about Barber of Seville is that like every single character is like lovable in some way and has their own insane show-stopping aria with crazy notes that seem superhuman. Every single character introduces themselves with an aria that makes you think like they are the most like over-the-top character you've ever seen in your life. And there's like 6 of them, and they're all bouncing off each other for the entire show. It's a really fun piece to watch and listen to, and I'm sure it's fun to play in, Alek.
Absolutely. No, I'm not the only one who really loves the show. You know what I mean? Like it's I don't know, top 3 all time, you know, most popular performed operas. There's a reason, you know, that I just keep going back to that. Sure, the music is fun. Like Rossini did a great job. It's toe tapping, exciting music, you know, and it's easy to listen to. It's tonal, right? So it's hummable
Really
after the
catchy.
show. Yeah, totally catchy stuff. But yeah, all the characters have clear motivations, no matter traditional setting or monster setting or some off the wall, you know, avant-garde setting. But all the characters are understandable in what they want, and so you want to see how that ends. You're invested, you know.
Amazing. Chris, one other thing I wanted to introduce is like the way that you are playing in a tradition of illustrators designing for the opera stage.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have talked a little bit about this, but 2 of the ones that come to mind for me are Maurice Sendak, who did an amazing set design for The Magic Flute by Mozart, and Edward Gorey, and who, you know, had his entire sort of aesthetic universe turned into a Broadway musical. And like what I think in both of those cases, the set was really unapologetically based on illustration. Like it wasn't like I make these sketches and then you turn them into what like a stagey kind of show. It was like, no, we're going to take your lines and just blow them up and print them, and that is the set.
And that was something that we wanted to do with this. I talked to the you know, I live in a very rural area. You know, we don't even have a Walmart. You know, we had one at one point. It sank into an old mine, and now we don't.
That's a graphic novel right there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but we have a wonderful fine arts center with a big stage and auditorium thing. I think about 1,000 seats, and that it exists because of a financial gift from a lady in town who passed away a number of years ago, who you know, was a big supporter of the arts and extremely wealthy. And so we really lucked out with that. And so anyway, so I was talking to the tech director at length about how modern projectors work with different performing arts centers. A lot of them have these projectors that can do set work. And we were talking about, well, how do you do it when there are platforms and when there are levels, and that adds a degree of difficulty and things like that. So a lot of that, you know, doing this design with that in mind, that some people, if they're staging this version of the production, might want to do an actual set. Some people might want to project it, and some people might want to do that. You know, the cost for printing or painting or whatever are, you know, presumably astronomical at that scale. Maybe not. It's probably fine. But, you know, I think that a lot of people would find it more viable to do a set projection. And so part of the design of this and where the levels were was just as much for playability in the set as it was for viability with doing that and turning it into a traditional staged production with that kind of Sendak gory line art on the stage. But yeah, I love that stuff. I forget his name. The guy who did Olivia the Pig did some stuff for Seattle. I think it was Seattle. But there are a number of those. They're not. I think the Sendak and the Gory are
Ian Falconer.
Yeah, the Falconer. Yeah, the Sendak and the Gory are the best in this tradition, I think, and that's why we still know them. You know, the Gory. I have it back there. I have a whole little wall of paper theaters and stuff. And the Gory one, I built kind of a Lazy Susan. So it's permanently affixed to the wall, so I can't bring it over to show it. But it's this 3-set thing that you can move it around. And so, hey, there you go. So he's got it.
Hey.
So you can buy a little model of that, which I think is just wonderful, and it's so neat. And then Sendak, there's a book that came out. My father passed away in 2019, and the book came out, I think, within like months of his passing, which I was really sad about because I would have loved to have given this book to him for Christmas. But I think it's called Setting the Stage, but it's all of Sendak's opera and ballet design. So it's got his Nutcracker, it's got his magic flute, it's got like photos of the little mock-ups that he made. It's beautiful.
Wow. We've got Mike Road in the comments saying there's a long history of paper theater designed by various different artists.
Yeah. So yeah, the Paper Theater Museum closed 2 months before the last time I was in London. It was on my list, and I got there and I was like, no. So yeah, I didn't get a chance to see it. I was so disappointed. But we did spend a lot of time in its sort of. They split off in the 80s. They didn't really have anything to do with each other after that point. But there was the Pollock's Theater Museum, and there was the Pollock's Toy Theater Store. And so we did spend a lot of time in the shop, and I picked up a few things, and it was really neat. But I love that kind of thing. I picked up every book I can find on them. I'm sure there are plenty more that exist out there, but it's a fascinating sort of sub group of toys that are very art based that I think are just wonderful. And I love. I would always get those kind of books, build your own paper castle, but I'd never build them. I just look at the books.
Right.
And so I don't know. So that's one of the reasons why I'm glad this one comes with a little companion booklet, because the looking at the books, like, all the different pieces are all over the place. Like, you can't really get a sense of the look of the castle until you put it together, or of the house. And so so having the booklet gives you your cake and eating it too. Like, you can still put it together and still have a little booklet that you can keep on the shelf and look at later.
That's a great way to put it, having your cake and eating it too. One thing is clear, like, this is opera is supposed to be the ultimate art form, right? It contains visual art and dance and music and costumes and, acting and all of these things simultaneously. And so there's no one single way to dive into this project. You can do the hands-on stuff, you look at the visuals, you can enact the story dramatically, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I want to be sure we get back to the rest of the characters, because like we said, there's so many amazing ones in this show. And we talked a lot about Count Almaviva because, of course, he's the tenor, he's the romantic hero.
And by the way, the opera was originally titled Almaviva. But the premiere went so badly that they changed it.
They changed it to my favorite character.
Yeah.
The baritone, the barber of Seville himself, Figaro. The famous Figaro. That everybody has heard, but may not actually know where it comes from. This is where it comes from.
This is it.
And he's a little bit of a wolfman biker dude in your version.
That's right. Here's his bike.
Incredible.
Cool, right? He is a little bit of a wolfman. There's a couple different reasons for that. First, I find him mercurial. He's able to adapt to the situation. He comes up with new ideas on the spot. Since Almaviva is our vampire, there's a little bit of play with the, whole vampires and werewolves, and their relationship.
Is also great for the Twilight fans in your life.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
Love triangle.
So if we look just slightly ahead to the sequel called The Marriage of Figaro, spoiler alert, it turns out Figaro's dad is Dr. Bartolo. So,
Bum, bum, bum.
so this all ties together because Dr. Bartolo, our mad scientist, who is Dr. Frankenstein, who is Dr. Jekyll, is also the Werewolf of London, which is a science werewolf, right?
Okay.
And so when he has his child, eventually off camera, off stage, turns out that dude's a werewolf. So it just fit so nicely into, I didn't have to like come up with weird reasons or artistic license even, just like, well, that kind of makes sense in
He's also the deeper voice, right? He's a little bit
right.
more of a man's man.
That's
and things kind of come easily to Figaro, right? He's sort of the Bugs Bunny character. He's the one who can just fix everybody's problem. That's what his opening aria is about. He's the factotum. He can just do what he can take care of any problem you got. He's like, baby, I got you.
I've been trying to figure out a way to do some sort of Figaro gift for my brother-in-law, who is both a barber and also the unofficial mayor of my town. Like he's the guy who knows every single person. He helps up, and I'm just like, man, there's such crossover there, and I haven't figured it out yet. So eventually I'll figure it out.
Especially hairy.
The what?
Is he especially hairy?
No, he's got the regular amount of hair, which is too bad. But...
okay, so that's Figaro. And of course, we need to have our leading lady. Tell us about Rosina.
Let's get her over here. She admittedly she's got a third look, and here she is. She's the biggest stretch, shall we say. So Rosina is trapped in this place against her, I don't know if against her will, but she certainly doesn't have the agency to decide to leave. And so you could sort of lean into like a haunting, if you will, a presence that is trapped in a location. Yes. I also really like the fact that Winona Ryder keeps on popping up in my favorite horror movies, starting with Dracula, but also Beetlejuice. I mean, I love Stranger Things, so she's heavily based on Winona Ryder's roles, but also Mary Shelley. Let's throw her in for good measure. And then the other iconic female that we had to have is the bride, which absolutely works the best because
everybody in the opera wants her to be the bride.
Exactly. So first we have Chris indulged me, and we added a snake. She's got a little pet snake. She's wearing a veil, somewhat like Lydia Dietz. This is her first sort of like ghostly apparition appearance in the window when she's being serenaded, but doesn't really respond to Almaviva's first attempt. Then, after her bravura aria, she gets dressed, and we've got a little bit of a young, innocent Mary Shelley vibe. All right, gonna go take my music lesson, gonna go see the Headless Horseman downstairs, all of those things. And then finally, after the storm, mind you, we realize that she's been dead the whole time. And Bartolo revives her to this effect, which is just, look at that design. You know where it's coming from, but it's completely original. It's just he's a genius, that guy over there.
Oh,
yeah, no, you are, man. You are. You. I don't know how we got together, but I'm so glad we did.
Me too.
I'm going to be proud of myself for noticing.
Project. I have enjoyed every single stage of this.
Should we keep going? You want to, or
sure? Let's run quickly through the other characters.
Yeah, those are the good guys. Now the antagonist. Some people have a soft spot for him. I kind of don't. It's fun. It's fun. It's fun when he's nasty. He's just despicable. Dr. Bartolo in his Man About Town.
The man of the house.
That's right.
Where the title comes from.
That's indeed the Bartolo of the House of Bartolo. And I called it that because, as I said, it used to be called Almaviva. It's often, most frequently called the Barber of Seville. Rosina hasn't really had a shot yet, but this time we're calling it the House of Bartolo. Here he is in his lab coat. And now you really start to understand what this guy's all about. Fits just beautifully. You know where he goes in the house. That the lab is definitely his domain. And there is an important bit of drama during this music lesson I was talking about. Bartolo insists on observing. So these two, Almaviva and Rosina, they're kind of flirting with each other. They're trying to get close to each other, but Bartolo is watching in his favorite comfy chair, which you can put in the house like this. By the way, my daughters noticed the feet and eyes immediately. They're like, "Oh, look at that."
Yeah, great. I'm glad.
Yes. And then Bartolo.
I wanted it to be sort of. I was like, I don't think Addams Family had a chair that was sentient, but I thought it should. Like that felt. That's the vibe I thought it needed. So yeah,
that's great.
All right, so you can have Bartolo sleeping during the music lesson. Now his household consists of 2 servants who are called Berta. And she's modeled after the character Nina from, I believe it's 1942, the House of Dracula film, where they started crossing over all the Universal monsters. Well, she is a hunchback in that film. She's replacing Igor, all that stuff, and was a direct fit for this concept. So again, like the universe kept saying this would work and this would work, and my running tab was just getting so long. I had to make the thing, if only to stop thinking about it. Have you ever done that? Ambrogio, mentioned before, is Bartolo's first creation. I'll show. Here's Bartolo's scale. He's a big guy, right?
He is a big guy.
But look at those feet. You mentioned that these are all costumes, and it's true. You can put feet on, you can put fingers on, and you can put that head on right on top of your own head.
Yeah, so the arms are long because you'd be holding fake hands at the end of your wrists. You'd have these platform lift shoes.
Incredible.
You could wear a little hat that's the top brain part.
This is like a gothic Julie Taymor costume.
Yeah.
Hey, that's right. That's right. Edward Gorey, Julie Taymor, Chris Schweizer. Let's see who else. Okay, so then we've got some sort of supporting characters.
What about Don Basilio?
Just quick aside, I would love, I can't show worth anything, but I would love to do costume concept for theater stuff, especially stuff that is necessitates effect in some capacity. Like something weird. So this is my chance to do that. I'm never going to do that because I can't follow through. But this way I don't have to. It's just, the concept's there and I get to throw it out and it's so much fun.
Chris, we're going to do it. I just want you to know.
I think this is the follow through, man. This is great.
So this is Don Basilio. He's Vincent Price. Yeah, or ish, based on homage to the famous Vincent Price.
Parody.
Which Vincent Price? Dr. Phibes.
Yeah, he's got the Dr. Phibes hair for sure. But I was like, costume wise, I'm like any of the Corman Poe stuff kind of vibes.
All that stuff, right?
A lot of it. Most of all of these, I didn't actually look at any of the designs. I just kind of was like, well, what do I remember about the designs of these iconic characters, and what can I pull that's kind of from that versus looking, because when you look, you start to fall into the trap of replicating. Whereas if you're thinking about it, you often come up with designs that are wildly different from the original, but which still have the sense.
They feel right.
Of it. Yeah.
Well, and Vincent Price is one of those figures where the idea of him is more important than any of the specific roles. Just like you were talking about with the Commedia dell'arte characters, right? Like there's this archetype somehow that's in the air.
That's exactly right. Exactly. Precisely. To continue our supporting roles, we've got this is Almaviva's lackey for the first scene. His name is Fiorello. Yep. That's him. Except that obviously if we have a Dracula, we need a Renfield. And I have had to redo his since the thing because I did not
like when I first did his design and I never changed it, I was thinking that he was tangentially part of Bartolo's household, and so he doesn't have an aspect of red in it. So I need to make his tie red.
I don't. Okay,
folks, you're watching this happen live on the air.
Yeah. We could have a red tie. We get a red tie. I gotta say,
Alek pointed that out. I was like, he was like, you know, he's this because I you know, and he's got pinstripes,
like a little red fez or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Ardeth Bay. That I tried, and originally I tried to have Basilio be some version of the Mummy, but he was and Chris chimed in, and you were right. He was a little too supernaturally powerful. Compared to the rest of all the characters, if you throw the Mummy in, he would tip the balance a little bit. So we just went Vincent Price and left the Mummy. Maybe in Marriage of Figaro, we'll find him. So yes, the musicians that Almaviva has hired at the beginning of the show.
Oh, love them.
Yes, mariachi style, Seville band, Dia de los Muertos masks. Come on, Chris Schweizer.
Fantastic. I mean, we're here in Seville. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Got to do it.
And we've got the police who show up. It says, "What's all that noise?" Very, very good.
I was trying to find what a police constable in Seville in the 18 teens would have been wearing. So
yeah, not a lot of reference photos for that.
Yeah. And then we've got sort of like just like a fun throw in, because this guy, he's a mute role. He shows up for like the last 2.5 minutes. He's the notary who is here to, authorize the marriage contract. And so why not have someone really iconic?
Nice. Invisible
right?
Man.
You get
because we were because whenever I like hear different things, I was like, is the notary singing role? And Alex like, nope. And I was like, perfect. He's got bandages over his mouth too. Like we get to lean real hard into it. So
that's right. And you don't know, maybe he's been around the whole show and was naked.
Yeah.
And then as a special request, Chris threw in, he found room for this taxidermied black cat. And that's another one of these weird opera references. So one of the reasons that the premiere went so badly is that a random black cat jumped up on the stage and they couldn't get it to leave, and it was harassing the singers and it was causing a ruckus. And so I thought we need it.
Yes.
Right.
And this is that exact cat. 200 years later.
This is it. Well, they've preserved it. Yeah. It's in a museum.
Exactly. It's timeless.
That's right. And of course, Bartolo hates it. And so we can put it in every room that he's in to keep the harassment up. Yeah. Is that everyone? I think that might be everybody. Yeah. It's plenty.
Well, opera is timeless, but this Kickstarter is not. We have, I just checked the website, 26 days, I believe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what's the plan? You guys have designed the whole set and all the figurines. Chris, it sounds like you're still making final tweaks here and there.
Yeah, a little bit. And with the cutting especially, we're working with a manufacturer in Europe that does mostly board game components. And so this is outside of their original wheelhouse, but they know what they're doing.
Prototypes look amazing.
Thank you. And I sent off, files and like, here's what it was. And their logistics guy circled all the things that won't work with their cutters so what it's being done on is basically like paper that's been bonded to an extremely dense EVA foam. So it's got a little bit of flex to it, which will help with the putting it together. But it's die cut. So all of the different pieces have a basically like this cookie cutter thing that presses down and punches them out. And so it'll come as a board that you then sort of push the pieces through.
Okay.
So there's some logistical stuff. And this is the first time it's not the first time I've dealt with a manufacturer doing cutting stuff. It's the first time I've done this specific type of thing. So it's, a lot of learning on the job, but it's, they've been incredibly helpful. They've given, it's a weird size because it's a European size that, to us is like 12.36 inches or something, but, for them it's 35 millimeter. And so that'll come flat packed with the booklet that is also the same size. They were like, we were like, what size does the booklet need to be? Can y'all print this, or do we do this separate? And they're like, we can print it and make it the same size so nothing will slip out of the packaging.
So it'll just come together in one flat pack. Awesome. Do you have a timeline for when folks might expect that to get shipped? I know this is tricky with Kickstarters, particularly when you're doing stuff that you've never done before.
Alek, you gave it a really healthy timeline for like a deadline. The hope is that it's done earlier, but
that's right. I was extra cautious with how long it would really take to get into the hands of the backers. I don't think it's obnoxiously distant, but I gave myself about a year to get it in. Now, like Chris just said, we're ready to go into production, right away. But with the time to manufacture, the time to ship, the time for me, we have add-ons as well in the Kickstarter, and so I'm going to do all that myself and make sure everything gets to the right place, and that just might take a little bit of time because we're not a big operation.
Like we said, this is a labor of love. So just going through it real quick, there's a digital edition, which is going to be the booklet with all the character art, some bonus illustrations, and a retelling of the story.
That's right.
And that'll be like a PDF file that you get. There is the printed booklet, which you can get as another tier. There is the actual real toy set, theater, all the pieces, and the booklet shipped to you. And then there is the super deluxe impresario tier in case you want to subsidize in a very generous way.
Now look, that we're optimistic, but that's really just in case someone did want to consider.
Yes. We don't want to stop you from writing an enormous check.
I mean, we'll take all the checks. But if someone was really trying to consider, maybe we could put this on at the theater, or with, I don't know, your local opera club, as you do. We're ready to have that conversation. Like Chris was saying, this is all designed in with the live production in mind. It doesn't have to be that, but it can be that. And so, the phone line is open on that.
If you are a producer or a venue and you're excited about this concept, you know where to find these guys.
That's right.
And it looks like there's also some bonus stuff from each of you. Cards, posters, art prints, both from this and from some other projects, and the Carmen graphic novel that Alek worked on earlier. Is this original art from you, Chris? Wow.
There he is. I didn't see that on the Kickstarter. I guess I forgot that.
These are the bonus add-ons that you can do if you back one of the sections.
Yeah. So I've got I think, is it easily accessible here?
I might just buy all those myself. So if you're interested in those, you better get them before I finish this chat.
Yeah, I don't see them here. I saw it this morning. I have the Figaro one on hand. But yeah, the original art. So the art for the set was done digitally because it had to be adaptable. Like I had to be able to change it as measurements changed and things along those lines. The art for the booklet is done traditionally. So I did that one on paper. And let me note. Whoops, this one here. Hang on. And so so the ones that were on paper are going to be the ones that are on illustration board are the ones that are going to be available.
Awesome.
So Alek, do you see this comment here?
I do. I'm going to look right now. I think you can just, once you decide you want the set, then you can just add on.
Add the prints one at a time.
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
And last but not least, there's a vocal coaching session with Alek.
There he is.
Very cool. Over Zoom.
Like that sort of thing. Yeah.
I might take advantage of that myself.
All right.
Fantastic. I can finally practice my logo factotum.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh boy. Well,
it's
guys,
a great song. I'm a bass baritone, and so It's a strain. It's a strain.
Yeah,
hitting
the high
out.
G, I think, is going to be a reach.
I can hit those notes, but they're ugly. They're real ugly.
You and me both.
You can be our Bartolo. We can do the show almost.
Well, but
right. So add a donation tier if we
I'm
clear
in
a
that
certain
awkward
threshold.
position of not being a low enough bass to really do the good bass rolls, but not being a high enough baritone to do the good baritone rolls. So your support staff. That's okay.
If you hit a high enough threshold, then these two guys will record them doing a duet from one of the numbers of Barber Seville.
Here's the thing.
You heard it here
likes
first.
me. I think Alek likes me. So I don't want him to hear me sing.
All right, Chris, you'll have to sing something, and we'll make Alek draw something. How about that?
That's perfect. That's perfect.
All right. Well, if there's
before we close up, I was wondering if anybody, I mean, we posted some things on there, but if anybody had any questions before we wrap for Alek or myself or for Leigh, feel free to type them into the comment section of YouTube that you can see there. There's a little, I think it says chat maybe. So those are available there. But Leigh, you had something else you were going to ask. I'm sorry.
Oh no, just let's see. If folks are discovering you for the first time, Chris, where can they find more of your tasty art and tchotchkes and interactive, touchable art?
The best avenue is probably to look at my website, which I need to be a little more updated with. I have a Patreon that I use kind of as a blog. For anybody who doesn't know, Patreon is sort of like a it's essentially a blog that is also sort of NPR support, but instead of for NPR, for individual artists. Like you do like a monthly pledge for $1 or $2 or $10 or whatever. And you get some reward tiers and things along those lines. But my website it has links to all that stuff, also to my stores and things along those lines. It's schweizercomics.com. Schweitzer is spelled SCH. Or here, you know what? I'll type it into the comment.
It might be on the screen right now. SCHWEIZER. And he's got awesome papercraft sets from literature, from folklore, various little books, great graphic novels, etc., etc. Alek, if folks want to connect with you, where should they find you?
I'm trying to get more active on social media. I got pretty bummed when the old Twitter went away.
I hear that.
But now I'm starting to post a little bit more on Instagram. I don't really have a website, but I'm just some guy anyway. I do want to say, can I give a shout out? Can I say thank you to Mike for buying the Carmen graphic novel back when it was new? Thank you, Mike. And you can also get that through this as well if you want to add that on.
Yep, that's one of the add-ons available in the Kickstarter once you make your pledge.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mike is a fantastic guy. He was one of my earliest readers, I think. So I'm very, he picked up and was, vocal about enjoying my Krogan Adventures books when they first came out. So I'm very grateful to Mike for his stalwart, support, despite the fact that I'm all over the place, career-wise.
All the interesting people are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the theme of this project, I think.
Yeah.
Well, gosh, for my part, I just
and
wanted
Alek, you are just a quick aside. You are currently directing I forget exactly what it's called. It's not like the young opera.
It's a long name. It's I'm up in Napa. The festival Napa Valley is a big music festival, and now they have a little opera component there. This is called the Minetti Shrem Opera Program, and I'm directing some young singers in some opera scenes on July 18th. If you want to come and see that, we're at the Krug stage, and there's wine tastings as well. Wine and opera. Who could ask for anything more?
Fantastic. For my part, I just want to give a couple shout outs. One, if you love putting papercraft projects together, my company Top Shelf is about to publish the Moon and Serpent Bumper Book of Magic by Alan Moore and Steve Moore, which is finally the summation of Alan Moore's mystical theory of the universe, and includes like a 10-page section at the back where you can build your own like occult temple. As well as complete lessons on how to commune with, the spiritual realm and discover your own magical powers. Secondly, if you're really into smashing together universal horror movies and monsters, a couple of friends of mine have this great podcast called Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe? Which takes the premise of the Universal Pictures tried to launch a Marvel-style cinematic universe with Tom Cruise as the Mummy, and the first movie bombed, so they forgot about the whole project. But my friends have now recorded this long-running podcast where they imagine additional films in that franchise, and it's become this great phenomenon. So check that one out. And then there was one more. Shoot, I'm going to forget. If you have never heard The Barber of Seville before and want to check it out, there's a million great recordings. There's one with the incomparable Maria Callas and Tito Gobbi. My favorite video is the recording with Daniela Denise and Bjorn Berger, which was filmed at the Glyndebourne Festival a few years ago. And that is, I think, streaming on the Medici service. And it's also like a Blu-ray and DVD and stuff. I fell in love with opera just a few years ago, and I'm now a complete nut for it. As we've said, like, it really is all of the art forms at once. And I love, Alek, your attitude about it, where it is old, but it is ours to play with. And like mashing it up with different styles, different time periods, like, is what it's all about. Like, that's why people love opera now, is because how can we take this thing that's been a crowd pleaser for hundreds of years, but like, how can we make it ours? And how can we do something with it that makes us feel like new and exciting? So I'm totally into what you guys are doing here. And I can't wait to get my set.
Awesome. Thank you, Leigh. Yeah, that's awesome. That's perfectly put. I wish I had thought of that. It's old, but it's ours to play with. That's our set. That's our play set right here.
And quick aside, my mom texted me that my dad did do Barber, but it was the last show he did before I was born. So it was like in 1980, but not my part of 1980. Yep.
Do we know what character?
Yeah. She didn't say. I am guessing probably. Why am I blanking on his name? Ambrosio. I would guess based on his what he's saying.
Right. His style.
It could have been what's Basilio? What part is he?
Bass.
Actually, I bet he was Basilio. He's a Basilio guy. I can see him. Yeah, my mom just texted and said yes. So okay.
Yes. Fantastic.
There we go. Yeah. Sorry, I just again. So thanks for watching, Mom.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Mike, I don't know if sorry, my dad asked if there are recordings of my dad online. I don't think so. I don't know. Some of the, we have VHSs, but all of his productions were pre-digital age. So I doubt it. If there are, I haven't seen them. I don't think he ever put any up. Sorry for that last minute aside that had nothing to do with the opera itself.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Can we get one last look at those sets?
Yeah.
If one or the other of you can pull it out and give us a 360. This is real. This is like the home shopping network here.
Yeah. And Alek, do you want to hold a figure up to it for scale? Like, I didn't have any figures with this to show how they look in comparison.
I'm just totally knocked out by what you guys have made.
Yeah. Well, for gaming friends. Oh, you put a bunch of them on there. Thank you. So for friends who like to do like tabletop gaming or something like that, I thought, you know, this is close enough to 28 millimeter scale that I might just make it 28 millimeter scale. So it's 28 millimeter scale. So if anybody does games with miniature figures, they are of this scale. And so if you have a
your
horror
Dungeons
thing
and
that you
Dragons
want to do,
characters through this set, you can send your Warhammer guys through this set.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, many hours of fun lie ahead of you for you folks picking up this set. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Any last words, or shall we say goodnight?
We bid you welcome
to the house of Bartolo.
Yeah.
Thank you all so very much, everybody.
Take care, guys. Thanks for having me.